There is a very distinct tragic sound that paper makes when it catches fire. It does not just burn instantly, it gasps. It curls inward like a dying, helpless hand, turning 50 years of irreplaceable family heritage into floating gray ash in a matter of seconds. 20 long years ago, my former mother-in-law stood over a rusted metal trash drum in her damp backyard, tossing in my childhood photo albums, my late mother's handwritten recipe books, my birth certificate, and my college degree. She looked me dead in the eye with a cold, terrifying smile and said, "You came into this family with absolutely nothing, Evelyn, and I am going to make sure you leave with even less. As of today, you simply do not exist." She was right about one thing. That young, naive, and helpless version of me did cease to exist that very night. But what she failed to realize is that when you burn everything a person owns down to the ground, you leave them with absolutely nothing left to lose. If you have ever been completely crushed by someone who thought they were untouchable, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and buckle in. Because today's story proves that karma does not just catch up eventually. Sometimes it puts on a black judicial robe, sits on the highest bench, and grabs the heavy wooden gavel. My name is Evelyn Vance. But back when this story began, I was just Evelyn Wright. A quiet 22-year-old orphan who truly believed that love could heal the deepest wounds of the past. My parents died in a horrific car accident during my sophomore year of college. In a single night, my entire world was completely shattered. I had no brothers, no sisters, no aunts, and no grandmothers left to comfort me. All I had left of my entire life before that terrible crash were 3 battered cardboard boxes. They were filled with old framed family photographs, my mother's handwritten daily diaries, my father's military service medals, my original birth and school records, and the original deed to a small 2-bedroom stone cottage located on the quiet outskirts of Oak Ridge, a piece of land my grandfather had built with his own bare hands, sweat, and blood. When I met Julian Vance, I truly believed in my heart that I had finally found a sanctuary. He was charming, attentive, and soft-spoken. He listened to my stories about my parents with what appeared to be genuine empathy. But what I was far too young and heartbroken to understand was that Julian was completely hollow on the inside. He was a vessel entirely filled, directed, and controlled by his overbearing mother, Victoria Vance. The Vances were local old money, or at least, they desperately pretended to be to maintain their high society status. Victoria ran the entire family with an iron fist, completely obsessed with social standing, country club prestige, and absolute control over everyone around her. The very first moment Julian brought me to their grand estate, Victoria looked at me not as a prospective daughter-in-law, but as a dangerous, unwanted infection. To her, I was just a nobody. A penniless girl with no family fortune, no elite pedigree, and no political connections. I remember standing in their cold, grand marble hallway during my first Thanksgiving dinner there, when I accidentally overheard Victoria speaking to Julian in the kitchen. Her voice was sharp, dry, and filled with utter contempt. She told him that I was a complete charity case. She said I had no backing, no family power, and if he were stupid enough to marry me, he would be dragging dead weight behind him for the rest of his life. Julian did not defend me. He did not say he loved me. He just stood there, poured himself a glass of wine, and quietly murmured that I owned the cottage property, and that it was prime commercial land in a rapidly growing area. That right there should have been my cue to turn around, run away, and never look back. But I was young, lonely, grieving, and desperately searching for a sense of belonging and family. Within 6 short months, Julian and I were married in a tiny civil courthouse ceremony. Victoria did not even bother to show up or attend the small reception afterward. Shortly after the wedding, Julian began his subtle manipulation. He convinced me to move into the vast Vance family mansion temporarily, claiming it would help us save money while he transitioned between high-paying corporate jobs. Then, he gently persuaded me to sign a property management agreement. He claimed his family's expensive team of corporate lawyers could help manage, protect, and handle the leasing of my late grandfather's stone cottage while we rented it out to local tenants. I was young, still grieving the loss of my parents, completely inexperienced in contract law, and I trusted my husband blindly. I signed what I believed were basic standard maintenance and property management forms. I had no idea I was handing them the keys to my entire legacy. For 2 agonizing years, my daily life inside that grand mansion became a slow, painful grind of psychological abuse. Victoria made it her personal mission in life to remind me of my lowly place every single day. She would systematically leave me out of formal family portraits. She would make cruel, snide remarks about my simple, off-the-rack clothes in front of her wealthy, judgmental friends. She would publicly refer to my personal belongings as worthless clutter brought in from the slums. And slowly, day by day, Julian transformed from an attentive partner into his mother's spineless, unfeeling echo. Whenever I brought up the idea of moving out and finding our own modest apartment, he would roll his eyes, sigh heavily, and accuse me of being overly dramatic and ungrateful. He constantly reminded me that his mother gave us a luxurious roof over our heads, and that I should be thanking her on my knees because I had absolutely nothing before they took me in. The final breaking point arrived on a cold, dreary, rainy Tuesday afternoon in late November. I came home early from my long shift at the local legal clinic, where I worked minimum wage hours as a low-paid paralegal clerk. As I walked up the long, winding gravel driveway toward the estate, I noticed a thick, dark, chemical smoke drifting up into the rainy sky from behind the house. I walked around the brick side of the grand mansion and froze in absolute horror. Victoria was standing next to a large, rusted oil drum that had bright orange flames roaring out of the top. Standing right beside her was Julian, holding a heavy, black plastic crate. It was my crate. The locked crate I kept hidden safely under our bed. I screamed out loud and ran across the soaked, muddy grass, desperately asking them what on earth they were doing. But before I could reach the barrel, Victoria casually tossed a stack of old, leather-bound books directly into the roaring fire. I recognized the gold-embossed spine instantly. It was my late mother's personal daily diary, the only place left where her voice still existed. I dropped straight to my knees in the cold mud right by the burning barrel. I reached my hands out blindly toward the flames, trying to grab the burning pages, but the blistering heat was far too intense. I wept uncontrollably. I begged Julian to stop her. I screamed at him that those were my dead parents' only surviving photos, my mother's daily journals, my father's military service records, my birth certificate, and my hard-earned college diploma. Julian did not move an inch to help me. He would not even look me in the eye. He just stood there quietly with his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, staring blankly down at the wet ground. Victoria stepped directly between me and the roaring barrel. She looked down at my shivering, muddy body with pure, unadulterated malice. She told me, in a calm and deliberate tone, that I was cluttering up her pristine home with my worthless garbage, and that they were officially done playing house with me. She announced that Julian had filed for an official annulment that very morning, and that I simply did not belong in their prestigious family or their elevated tier of society. Then, with a cruel, cold smile, she revealed the bitter truth. She told me that they were liquidating my grandfather's cottage property because the forms I had signed months ago were not management agreements at all. They were full legal transfer rights assigning the property directly to the Vance family trust. My stomach plummeted into a deep, dark, bottomless abyss. My breath caught in my throat. I looked up at her through my tears and asked if she had truly stolen my grandfather's home. She sneered, leaned down slightly, and told me that it was never really mine to begin with. She kicked a remaining torn scrap of a burned family photograph into the roaring fire, looked down at me, and spoke the brutal words that would burn in my mind for the next 20 years. She said, "Look at you, Evelyn. You have no family. You have no property. You have no legal documents. And you have no identity. You came to this family with nothing, and you leave with nothing. As of today, you simply do not exist. Now get off my private property before I call the local police to arrest you for criminal trespassing." I looked up at Julian one last time, my eyes begging for a shred of humanity. I whispered his name, begging him to say something, anything. He stepped back, crossed his arms tightly over his chest, looked away from me and said, "My mother is right, Evelyn. You just don't fit into our life or our future. It is honestly better for everyone if you just pack up and move on." I left the Vance estate that very night on foot, carrying only a single plastic trash bag containing the wet, muddy clothes on my back and $42 total in my bank account. No photographs of my deceased parents remained. No mother's diary. No legal documents to prove who I was. No home to return to. In a single calculated evening, they had successfully burned my entire past, erased my identity, and tossed me out like trash onto the dark, rainy street. When someone destroys your past so ruthlessly, you are left standing at a dangerous crossroad in your life. You have only two choices. You can lie down and freeze to death in the cold ruins of what used to be your life, or you can take the very fire they used to burn you and use it to forge yourself into something completely, utterly indestructible. I slept in my 10-year-old rusty sedan for 3 brutal weeks. I washed my face and brushed my teeth in icy public library bathrooms. I ate cheap, canned soup heated up directly on top of my car's hot engine block after driving around town. Every single night, as the freezing cold air seeped through the cracks of my car windows and settled deep into my bones, Victoria's sharp, cruel voice echoed over and over in my mind. As of today, you simply do not exist. I stared up at the dark, wet windshield, wiped the tears from my icy cheeks, and whispered back to the darkness, "Just watch me, Victoria. Just watch me." I took all that unbearable pain, all that bitter betrayal, and all that public humiliation, and I funneled it into a single burning, terrifying laser focus. I took extra night shifts at a legal document processing company, typing until my fingers bled. I sat under the dim glow of street lamps at 2 in the morning, studying endlessly for the law school admission test. When I finally got accepted into law school on a partial academic scholarship, I worked 3 separate jobs simultaneously just to pay for the rest of my tuition and buy food. Every single day, I took early morning janitorial shifts cleaning the university law building at 4 in the morning, mopping the floors, scrubbing the toilets, and wiping down the wooden desks. And then at 8 in the morning, I would sit down as a student in those very same lecture halls I had just finished mopping, taking meticulous notes on state law. I did not go to social parties. I did not go out on dates. I did not spend a single penny on new clothes or luxuries. I ate, slept, breathed, studied, and digested every single aspect of the law. I specialized specifically in complex real estate fraud, property rights, corporate trust manipulation, and land title disputes. I was determined to understand every hidden loophole, every obscure legal precedent, and every dark corner of property law that Victoria's expensive corporate attorneys had used to steal my grandfather's land from me. The years began to blur together into a relentless, unending, brutal marathon of pure discipline. I graduated at the very top of my law school class with highest honors. I passed the grueling state bar exam on my very first attempt, scoring in the top percentile. I spent 5 intense years working as a fierce, uncompromising civil litigator, systematically tearing apart fraudulent real estate syndicates and corporate land grabbers in court. After that, I served 7 distinguished years as a respected magistrate judge, earning a reputation for being completely fearless, sharp as a razor, and totally unbothered by wealthy, powerful figures. Bit by bit, brick by brick, I slowly rebuilt my entire life from scratch. I established my legal identity, legally reclaimed my maiden name of Evelyn Wright, and built an unshakable reputation throughout the entire judicial system as a judge who was completely immune to political pressure, massive wealth, or high society social status. 20 long years slowly passed by. Through unrelenting hard work, ironclad discipline, and a completely flawless judicial record, the state Supreme Court officially appointed me as the presiding chief civil judge of the 5th Circuit Judicial District, the absolute highest civil judicial authority in the entire county, including the historic city of Oak Ridge. I want to be completely clear about one thing. I never once actively searched for the Van Cess. I did not stalk them online. I did not hire private investigators. I did not plot some childish, cartoonish revenge scheme against them. I did not need to, because in my many years working within the legal system, I had learned a fundamental truth about human nature. Incredibly arrogant, greedy people like Victoria Vance always end up destroying themselves. Absolute arrogance creates massive, dangerous blind spots. And unchecked greed eventually drives people to make sloppy, illegal, and desperate mistakes. I simply stayed focused on my duties, held my head high, and waited patiently for the heavy wheel of justice to complete its slow, inevitable turn. And in the crisp autumn of my 20th year since that terrible rainy night, the wheel of justice delivered them right into the center of my courtroom. It turned out that over the past 2 decades, the Vance family's streak of blind luck and easy money had completely run dry. Julian's reckless, uneducated investments in volatile stock markets had quietly drained almost all of their liquid family capital. Victoria, completely desperate to maintain their grand, fake illusion of high society luxury and country club wealth, had turned to increasingly shady, illegal real estate deals across the county. And their primary remaining financial asset? It was a massive, multi-million-dollar commercial shopping and residential development project, built directly on top of my grandfather's stolen stone cottage land and the adjacent historic family parcels. A massive collective of working-class homeowners, local shopkeepers, and small business owners had finally banded together to hire a brave legal team. They filed a historic multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Vance Properties Enterprise. The legal charges listed in the court documents were staggering systemic real estate fraud, illegal deed transfers, predatory land seizure, forged property records, and corporate tax evasion spanning back over 15 years. Because of the massive financial scale, the high public profile, and the severe nature of the fraud allegations, the clerk of court assigned the case directly to the chief judge's personal docket. My docket. On the morning of the preliminary hearing, I sat entirely alone in my private judicial chambers. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, quietly smoothing down the heavy dark silk of my official judicial robe. I looked closely at my reflection in the glass. Gone was the terrified, weeping, wet 22-year-old girl standing by a burning trash drum in the freezing rain, begging for her life. Standing there in her place was a 50-year-old woman with silver-streaked hair, sharp, penetrating eyes, decades of deep legal wisdom, and the full, unyielding power of the state's judicial authority resting firmly upon her shoulders. I took a deep breath, composed my face into an expression of absolute neutrality, walked out into the quiet courtroom, and stepped up the carpeted wooden stairs to the high judicial bench. The courtroom was packed to absolute maximum capacity. News reporters, local business owners, and curious citizens filled every single wooden pew in the gallery. On the defense side sat the Vance family legal team, 4 high-priced, aggressive corporate defense attorneys clad in tailored designer suits, surrounded by stacks of expensive leather binders. And sitting directly behind them at the defense table were Julian and Victoria Vance. Time had been unbelievably cruel to the two of them. Julian had lost every single trace of his youthful, charming appearance. He looked haggard, bloated, visibly aged, and deeply terrified, nervously clutching a worn leather briefcase in his shaking hands. Victoria, now in her late 70s, still wore her signature pearl necklace and tailored coat, but her eyes were darting around the courtroom with intense, paranoid anxiety. They were facing total, undeniable financial ruin and immediate criminal charges if they lost this civil property battle. Neither one of them recognized me as I sat down. To them, I had been a nameless, insignificant ghost from 20 years ago. A poor, helpless girl whose memory they had deliberately burned, erased, and forgotten. And now, wearing gold reading glasses and a heavy black robe, sitting high above the entire room at the center of the judicial bench, I was simply the Honorable Chief Judge Wright. I adjusted my microphone and called the case to order in a calm, steady voice. For 3 agonizing, intense days, the trial unfolded before me. I listened to every single witness statement, every legal argument, and every piece of technical evidence with absolute, cold, unwavering neutrality. I did not show a single drop of personal bias. I did not make snide comments. I conducted the courtroom with rigid, flawless, and terrifying professionalism. The Vance family attorneys were insufferably arrogant throughout the proceedings. They relied heavily on old, obscure technical loopholes in property law. They stood up before the court and boldly claimed that the original land acquisition documents from 20 years ago were completely unchallengeable under state law, simply because the original owner records were permanently lost, destroyed, or non-existent. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, during closing legal arguments, Victoria's lead corporate attorney stood up, buttoned his designer suit jacket, and smiled smugly at the jury and the bench. He looked up at me and said, "Your Honor, my clients have held the legal title to these central commercial parcels for over 2 full decades. The opposing parties claim improper acquisition and improper transfer of deeds. However, there is zero surviving documentation in the county system to prove that this land was ever unlawfully transferred from its original family estate. The historical records simply do not exist. Therefore, under long-standing state adverse possession laws, The land title belongs solely and indisputably to Vance Enterprises Trust. Sitting behind him, Victoria Vance sat back in her wooden chair with a subtle, self-satisfied smirk playing across her wrinkled lips. Beside her, Julian let out a quiet, long sigh of relief. They truly believed they had won yet again. They believed that their old, dirty, evil trick, destroying physical paper trails, erasing people's histories, and outlasting their helpless victims in court, had worked successfully one last time. I leaned forward slowly on the high wooden bench, resting my hands flat against the polished oak surface. I looked down at the smug corporate attorney and spoke in a quiet, measured tone that carried through the silent room. "Counselor, do you state under oath that the original historical records for the Wright family parcel do not exist in any form?" The lead attorney adjusted his silk tie, stood up taller, and replied with absolute confidence, "That is correct, Your Honor. Any legal claims regarding the original Wright family estate are based purely on unverified rumors. There are no surviving family members left alive, no surviving original documentation, and no legal challenge was ever filed by the original estate owners at the time of transfer." I slowly took off my gold reading glasses, set them down on my desk, and turned my eyes directly toward Victoria Vance. For the very first time in 3 days, Victoria looked back up at me, really looked at my face, my eyes, and my features. I watched the horror of realization slowly creep into her fading eyes like thick, black poison entering a clear stream of water. First came utter confusion, then sudden shocking recognition, and then a look of sheer, paralyzing, ice-cold terror as every single drop of color drained completely from her face, leaving her pale as a corpse. She leaned over violently, grabbing Julian's arm with such force that her knuckles turned white. She began whispering frantically into his ear, pointing her trembling, age-spotted finger directly up at me on the high bench. Julian squinted his eyes, leaned forward, looked closely at my face for 5 long seconds, and then his jaw literally dropped open in utter, helpless disbelief. I turned on my judicial microphone, my voice echoing off the high stone walls and vaulted ceiling of the courtroom with immense, unmistakable authority. I said, "You are gravely mistaken, Counselor." I reached down to my side desk and pulled out a fresh, heavy, officially sealed state case file that I had personally prepared. Continued, "State court records have been thoroughly cross-referenced with regional historical land registries and secure digital backup archives that were established by the state Supreme Court years ago. Furthermore, this court has conducted an exhaustive, forensic review of the original corporate trust filings submitted by Vance Enterprises 20 years ago." I leaned over the bench and looked directly down into the terrified, pale faces of Julian and Victoria Vance. I spoke every single word with total clarity. "It is the formal binding finding of this court that the foundational land deeds held by Vance Enterprises were acquired through gross criminal misrepresentation, fraudulent contract execution, and the deliberate, unlawful destruction of material legal evidence." Victoria Vance suddenly pushed back her chair and stood up straight at the defense table, completely ignoring her lead lawyer's frantic hands trying to pull her back down. She pointed up at me and shrieked in a trembling, high-pitched voice, "Your Honor, this is a massive illegal conflict of interest. You cannot judge this case. You are." Bang! I struck the heavy wooden gavel down onto the block. The sharp, violent crack rang out through the courtroom like a high-powered gunshot. I looked down at her with eyes of solid ice and commanded, "Sit down immediately, madam. If you utter one more word without being formally recognized by this bench, I will have the court bailiffs place you in county physical custody for criminal contempt of court right now." Victoria froze in place, her mouth hanging open in shock, before she collapsed back into her wooden chair, trembling uncontrollably from head to toe. I brought the courtroom back to absolute silence and continued reading the binding judgment into the official public record. Based on the overwhelming, indisputable evidence of systemic long-term fraud, I hereby order the immediate total freezing of every single corporate bank account, asset, property, and fund held by Vance Enterprises Trust. I further order that the commercial property deeds in question are hereby completely revoked, voided, and reverted to public state administration for immediate financial restitution to the victimized homeowners and local shopkeepers. And then I paused for a long, heavy moment. I lowered my papers, looked Julian Vance square in his weeping eyes, and delivered the final blow. I stated, Furthermore, due to clear, undeniable, forensically verified evidence of long-term criminal conspiracy, illegal land seizure, grand larceny, and forged public land deeds, this court is officially referring both Julian Vance and Victoria Vance to the State Attorney General's office for immediate criminal prosecution and arrest warrant issuance. The entire courtroom instantly erupted into loud gasps, frantic murmuring, and the rapid clicking of cameras from news reporters sitting in the gallery. Julian Vance slumped completely forward over the defense table, burying his face in his hands, weeping openly like a broken child. Victoria sat completely paralyzed in her chair like a stone statue, staring up at me with wide eyes filled with tears of pure rage, absolute ruin, and total public humiliation. The vast, fraudulent empire she had spent her entire life lying, cheating, stealing, and destroying innocent lives to build was collapsing into dust around her ears, piece by tragic piece. I looked down at the two broken figures sitting at the defense table one final lingering time. I said, 20 years ago, Mrs. Vance, you stood over a burning barrel of my life and told a defenseless girl that without paper, without property, and without family, she simply did not exist. I picked up the heavy wooden gavel, held it firmly in my hand, looked her dead in her eyes, and whispered, "The court finds that justice, however, has an extraordinarily long memory." Bang! I struck the gavel down with absolute, unshakable finality. Court was officially adjourned. They had tried to burn my past and erase my existence simply because they thought I was weak, helpless, and easily disposable. But all they really ended up doing was stripping away all my life's distractions, burning away my fear, and leaving me with a singular, unstoppable, lifelong purpose. People who abuse their temporary wealth and power to crush vulnerable people always seem to forget one simple, inevitable rule of this world. The helpless people you step on your way up the ladder of life are very often the exact same people holding the ladder when you finally come crashing down. If that final gavel strike brought a smile to your face today, smash that like button right now. Leave a comment down below and share your personal thoughts on this incredible journey of payback. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications so you never miss another story of ultimate, satisfying revenge. Until next time, stay strong, stay sharp, and always stand up for what is right.